Hello and welcome to Coding Keywords live class. So if you're a beginner to Excel, I want to introduce you to the most powerful tool that you need. Okay, so and that's the pivot table, the pivot charts. So I'm going to go straight ahead and share my screen. And yes, then we can start. All right, so this is module 9 of our introduction to Excel course. I've had 8 modules so far and we've covered different things ranging from introduction to the Excel interface, data entry, data formatting, basic calculation. We looked at cell references, we looked at data organization, logical conditional functions, dates and text. And today we're looking at pivot tables. So we've got this data set and we're going to work with this data set. So let me just copy it and then paste it here. So we're going to start working with it very soon. And we saw that Excel is a software that deals. So it's a software for handling data, and data is so important in our everyday life. And so Excel is an important software. So first of all, we have to get the, and then once we bring in our data, we have to look at the formats, and we have to study the different types for the data we have. So is it numeric data? Is it text data? Is it date data? We're going to be looking at each column to find that out. And furthermore, we have um, calculations. So we've got basic calculations, and that has to do with our numeric data. And then we also have references. We need to understand cell references, our absolute references, relative references, mixed references for us to do our calculations well. And then we've got data organization where we format our data as a table. And then we also have dates and text. And we looked at several functions that we apply on our dates and text. So we're moving further to look at pivot tables today. And so we're going to take our data set. We have this our data set, and I'm going to insert tab and I'm going to format it as a table. So here I have the range here selected, and I should have my table as headers checked because I've got headers on the first row of my table. And go a step further. Let me also with my sharing. So this is a data set. So we're going to understand what pivot tables are and why they are powerful. We're going to correct data correctly for pivot tables using them. We're going to see how to use filters, sorting, and grouping. Essentially, we're looking at summarization, pattern discovery, and dynamic reporting, and these are very useful for data analysis. So the pivot tables are a tool for summarizing large data sets instantly and a way to answer business questions without formulas. So we've got this massive data set. Okay, not so massive because we just have 22 rows, but 1,000 rows, 3,000 rows, you've got lots of data you need to summarize. You need to summarize because when you have so much data, you can't easily make much sense out of it. It's complex. Apart from the number of rows, you might have so many columns, so you need to summarize. Very useful tool to assist you. So you're able to take portions of your data sets and then understand what your data set is all about by investigating in smaller bits. So that's what the pivot table is all about. It's all about taking your data sets and then viewing different parts little by little to understand it better. Yes, we have used several functions before. We use the sum if, we use the count if, we use formulas. What pivot table will do, all the stress of using all those formulas to understand your data. So it's a faster way to explore your data. So these are some of the examples of how pivot table is helpful. We've got a data set, say a sales data set. I want to find so total sales by region or average revenue by product or count of transactions per month. The pivot table can help us with these useful summaries. They are powerful. They update automatically, they allow instant reorganization of data, and they reduce errors. This is why I say it's the most powerful tool. So I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most powerful tool in Excel so far? Um, so I'm proposing the pivot table. I'm proposing the pivot table. So I want to hear feedback from you in the quick check on the stream to be sure it's going well. Apologies for the disconnection. I'm back. Yes, and my screen is shared and my sound is fine. Okay, so these are the header row, which I have. No blank rows or columns. We should have types and no merged cells. So what will make us have a good result from our pivot table. So best practice is to convert our data to an Excel table, which I've done before creating the pivot table. And when you have poor structure in your data sets, you're going to have issues like missing fields, incorrect totals, broken pivot charts. So essentially, you should have your data before you create pivot tables from the data sets. And we are going to create a pivot table showing the total revenue by region and format. So this is my data in a table, and I'm going to create a pivot table. So I'm going to select to insert and then pivot table. And then you have this dialog box here. So this is table 4. That's my table name. Of course, you can change the name to something more closer to what the data set is all about. So I can make it sales or wherever. I'm going to create my pivot table in a new worksheet. So I create my pivot table in a new worksheet. And so I just click on OK. So this is my pivot table. I'm going to have the pivot table here. So, and I have the pivot table fields here. So I'm going to move these pivot table fields away from here. And that's because my video is in front of it. And so I'm just going to move this and then I'll move it here. So these pivot table fields are what we're going to use to build the pivot table. So essentially, this is the data set, and all the columns in the data set will be in the pivot table fields. Okay, so I've got it here. So I've got all the columns here, and then I'm going to pick them. So what am I to do? To create a pivot table showing the total revenue by region. So this is the revenue column, and this is the region column. So for these data sets, my pivot table, the first pivot table, is not going to be concerned about all the columns. So it's just, and it's going to find the total revenue based on the categories in the region column. So all I have to do is go to region and drag it down to rows. Now the region column is a text column. So immediately I do that, you can see the rows of my pivot categories in the region column. Okay, so let's have a look at lesson. So in the lesson, we see the region has quite a number of rows, but in the pivot table with the region in the rows, I just have the categories. So that's summarization. No repetition, summarization. And then next up, I'm going to go with revenue. So I go with revenue, which is a numeric column, and I'm going to move the numeric column to the values field. And you see that. So let me make it bigger. So this is our first pivot table. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 categories, and this is the sum of revenue for each of them. This is one way of inspecting our data set. So these was our data sets, and now we're able to observe it a bit more closely by taking 2 columns and inspecting it based on the categories. So this is just a simple pivot table. Simple pivot table example. Let me check the stream to be sure that everything is fine. Okay, so my sound is fine. I'm still sharing. Yeah. So next up, we can format the revenue as currency. So I'm going to come here and just the same way you format a column in your data sets, I'm going to format it as currency by coming over here in the home tab, general format to currency. The highest total is for Middle East, which is 17,300 pounds. Okay, so that's a simple pivot table. And this is just the different steps you have to take to insert pivot table, and then we use the new worksheets. And then we looked at the different fields, the rows, the columns, the values, the filters. That's what we use to build the pivot table. And changes can be done live, it's interactive and not static. And then let's observe our pivot table a bit, and we're going to look at the value calculations. So over here, you see that we've got a region and we've got under our values, the sum of revenue or the total revenue for each region. So if I just click on this drop down here and I click on the value field settings, I've got other options apart from the sum. So it's a numeric column. I can find the sum like I did. I can also count the number of occurrences. I can find average. I can find the max entry there or the mean entry. So let me go with count. So essentially, if I choose count and I click on OK, what happens? Okay, I still have the currency format. So it's giving me counts. Okay, so it's telling me that under revenue, I have three occurrences for the region of Africa. And for the region of Europe, five times I have entries for Europe in my data set. So that's the count. It just counts how many times I have entries. Okay, so apart from going through these values and value field settings, I can come to my pivot table, click on the numeric any entry in the numeric side, and then right click, and then I can have summarized by the average. So here now I have the average for each region, and then I can also summarize by, let's say, max. I just want the maximum values. So here it's showing me that the maximum for the Middle East is 8,000. And let me go to my data sets and let me see 8,000. Now, if I come to my data set, I can filter. So come to region and filter by the Middle East. And there you go. Maximum from the revenue is 8,000. So this just shows exploration of our data sets using pivot tables. Okay, so that's about the value calculations and changing the value field settings like we saw. We can also do formatting, the currency, and then the difference between count and sum. So when we're using count, we're just trying to count how many times there was an occurrence in our data sets. But when we're using sum, we are summing up on a numeric column. All right, so now we want to create another pivot table where we show the revenue by region and products, and then identify the highest performing products per region. Okay, so how do I create another pivot table? In this sheet, I can do that by copying the existing pivot table and then pasting it. So just Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and I have another pivot table here. I can press Escape just to remove the highlights on this first pivot table. And so when I select this pivot table, I have the field here for it. And I'm just going to remove this. So let me just remove this for now and remove this. So that's a blank pivot table that I want to build. Now I want to describe something. Going back to my data set, this is the data set, and this has all the columns and all the rows. This is the data set. The moment I set my data set as a table, I have these filters here. And so I can use the filter to inspect the data set. So essentially, a lot of what we do when we do data analysis is take the massive data sets, what we have, and then we begin to inspect, we begin to check, we begin to observe, we begin to explore. So when you convert a data set into a table, the first way you can inspect is, apart from just looking at it, is to use the filters. So for example, I can come to column M, which has the dates, and I can click on this drop down, and the filter shows me that I've got 2 years, to 2024 and 2025 in this date column. And it's also grouped. I can still check the months within the year. Let me come over to the country column. So I can come to the country column, press the filter, and then I can see the countries there. Then I can come over to the product column, use the filter, and I check the product categories, and so on and so forth. So the first level of inspection on your data set is using the filters. When we are using the filters, we're just taking it column by column, column by column. So we just check the filter on each column. But what you observe with the pivot table is that we're going a step further. We're not just checking the filters for one column, rather we're picking more than one column. So in the first example here, we picked two columns, the region column and the revenue column. So we picked the region column and the revenue column, and we sort of explored both of them together. So this is region, this is revenue. We explored together in our pivot table, and this is what we have. So what we did was we took the region column, we summarized each category, we found the totals. Okay, this is marks now. So let me change it back to totals. And let me format it. So that gives me the currency. And if I want the dollar, say working with the dollar, I can right click and go to, let's see, number formats. Okay, so if I go to number formats, I can choose the dollar symbol. Okay, so I'll just go with the dollar symbol. All right, so okay, so there you go. Now we have two columns here, the region column and the revenue column. So we're going in each region. So I'm dragging the product to the columns, and then I'm going to drag revenue to values. And there you have, this is another, the region, which is on the rows, the product, which is in the columns, and then the values. So like I said, you work with text or date columns in your rows and columns, and then you work with numeric columns in the values. So let's inspect this a bit. This is showing us that, so let's look at the totals. So we can look at the totals and we can see the high 1,300. Our total sales, our maximum sales was for the Middle East region, and it was 17,000. Then the minimum is 7,900 for the region of Africa. So that's for the totals. We can also look at the defaults, and we can see for the smartphone, we've got 3,500 for the Americas region. We've got 3,900 for the Middle East region. So we're able to inspect and get a lot of information from this pivot table. Like we can see that we don't have all the products, we don't have values for all the products for each region. And then we also do not have all the regions for each product. So that's what we can observe, and we can look closely and get some hidden information from our data than if we just looked at the full data set this way. Okay, so that's our pivot table. Now let's look at some other things we can do here, and we can decide that we want to sort this in descending order. So I want the highest first so that I can easily read it. So all I need to do is just click on any cell here in the numeric column, right click, and I go to sort, and I can sort it from largest to smallest. So here I can see clearly the biggest and the smallest. So that's what I have here. Just in case I want to sort this grand total here, let me see, I can do this and then sort from largest to smallest, and there you go. So you see I've got, in terms of the products here, I have sorted from largest to smallest. So So the laptop product is what has the highest sales, and the least is the headphones. So you see how we can use all the features in this powerful tool, which is a pivot table, to inspect our data and get the hidden insights in our data. So the last pivot table I want to build here is just working with the dates. So this is what we should take note of: the fact that we use the text columns or the date columns for like our rows and our columns in a pivot table, and then we use, and there you go. So you see what has happened is I've just got a date, the groups, the different date groups for me in terms of years, in terms of quarters, in terms of months, which are added in the rows. So I can come over here. I've seen that it's when grouped in years. I just have 2024 and 2025. And then if I begin to ungroup, so I can just click on this, I can ungroup and see the spread of the dates based on the quarters and down to the months and down to the dates. So that's for 2024 quarter one, and I can check 2025 quarter two, and you see. So that's grouping of our pivot with the dates in the row. These are pivot table with text data in the rows and columns, and so on and so forth. So I bet you see how powerful a pivot table is. Now, just in case you do your pivot table on a date and it's not giving you the groups in terms of years, quarters, or months, you can come over to this date column and then right click and then go to group, and then you can select the group. So if I want to take off the quarters so that I don't have a group based on quarters and whatever, I can select or deselect accordingly. And there you go. So now I have the years and months as the grouping on my dates column. Okay, so let me check the stream just to be sure everything is fine. And then we're going to go ahead. All right, so that's pivot tables. And next up, yes, so we just seen grouping and we've seen sorting. Now let's look at, so we're going to see how to filter on our pivot tables. Now I'm going to go over what I just said, what I said earlier on, and appreciate and understand pivot tables better. Okay, so first of all, we have our data sets, and our data sets, we can have filters. And when we use filters, we're checking just one column. So that's what I said. Next up, we have our pivot table. And with our pivot table, we're checking not just one column, we're checking more than one column. All right, so let's look at our pivot table fields here. We've got our rows, we've got values where we put our numeric data, and then let's look at this one. We've got columns, so fill our rows and our columns. So I'm going to this first pivot table here, and I'm going to drag another column and fix it in the filter. Okay, so observe what happens. So let me remove the dates. Now just check what happens here. This is my pivot table and revenue. Now check what happens when I put a date. So just be observing here. So when I put the date here, can you see that the date filter here? So this is a filter for this pivot table. So I have a date filter. What it means is that I can check and I can select the days that I want to be applied in my pivot table. Okay, so what I'm going to do is rather than go with the date filter, okay, which is just the date, I'm going to go with the years. Okay, so I'm deselecting the dates and I'm going to put the years here. Okay, so I have a filter for years, and when you check the filter, we have 2024 and 2025. So let me select 2024 alone. And first of all, before I select it, my total here is 76,800. And so I go with 2024 alone, selecting only 2024, and there you go. Total is now 61,100. So you see how with just a click, I haven't written any formula. With just a click, I can inspect my data. Say I'm interested only in 2024, I have my total here, and I have the total for each region. And say I'm interested in 2025, I have it here. So this is how to use filters on our data sets. Okay, so let me come over here and I'm going to insert a few sheets rows here. Okay, so that I can come over here. And now this is a pivot table with the dates. And let me add a filter with the category. So I'm going to push category to filters and I have it here. And I can see the different categories. So if I want to see electronics, okay, so I want to see categories of electronics and I want to see um, how much total electronics was sold in 2024. All I have to do is come over to this category, click on electronics and click on OK, and you see it has changed. I have 51,500. So that's how to use filters. Beyond using filters now, because the filters are applied on each pivot table, we also have what we call slicers. So the slicer is like a filter that you can apply across all the pivot tables in the worksheets. So how do we do slicers? So what we can do is just select any pivot table. Once we have the pivot table selected, now you see I have this pivot table analyzed. Okay, that's also something to observe. So when I have the pivot table not selected and it's just a cell, you can see my last tab there is the power pivots. But when I select the pivot table, I've got this pivot table analyze tab there for me. And that when I click on it, you can see all the different features for the pivot table. And part of it is the slicer. Yeah, so this is the slicer. Set a slicer. And I'm going to insert a slicer for um, products. So let me insert a slicer for products and another one for let me say country. Okay, so there you go. Now these are the slicers. So this is a slicer for country, this is a slicer for products. How do the slicers work? So these slicers, let's see how the slicers are going to work on this. Okay, so first let me remove the filter so we don't have to, or let me, yeah, so let me remove the filter so that I have everything selected. Okay, so this is my data set here. Everything is selected. So my focus now is not the filter, but the slicers. Okay, so working with the slicer, I can say I want to see results for only Australia. And there you go. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust it a bit so that so I go to slicer settings and I'm just going to adjust it so that the hidden items, items with no data are hidden. And here you can see that for Australia, this is the total here, 4,800, that's the sum. And then the only product there is the laptop. Okay, so let's see Egypt. So, and that shows it's 2,500, it's the African region, and it's just the monitor. And this is France, and then also the monitor, Germany, laptop, okay? And you see it's changing dynamically. And then Italy, headphones. All right, so we can change the settings. Okay, can change the settings so that I can select more than one. So say I want Canada and Italy. You can see the result there. Total is 3,500. We have headphones and printer. If I want to add Fiji, you can see it's updating. So this is the slicer. All right. So now this is what I'm going to do. Now see what happens when I'm just on a cell and I'm not clicking on either a pivot table or a slicer. I have my tabs here. Once I click on the slicer, I've got the slicer tab here. And I can come over here, come over to slicer settings, and then I can change the settings. I can also click on this report connections and I can connect all the pivot tables in this sheet to the slicer. Now just check what happens. Immediately I did that, the pivot tables have been updated. Okay, so this has been updated. If I add Egypt, you can see it's updating, and you can see I'm interacting with the data sets. So I can have my slicer help me investigate whatever I want to investigate, either with the country, with the products, either of them or both of them. So that just goes to show how we use filters and slicers on our data sets. And we've also looked at grouping as well. And just a quick check on the stream to be sure everything is fine. So please, I want the feedback as to what you're learning and any question you have. And then I also want you to like this video. I want to subscribe so that you get notified about our uploads. Please also share so that more people will get to learn these powerful features of Excel for free. Next up, we're going to move to the pivot charts. The pivot chart is how we can visually have a representation of our pivot table, and the charts are updated with our pivot table as well. Okay, so we're going to create a pivot chart from our existing pivot table, and we're going to see, the charts and different types of charts, the column, the bar, the line, and then yes, so we have our pivot chart. So we're going to have a pivot chart for the revenue by region, and first as a column chart and then as a bar chart. So I'm going to come over here and I want to remove the slicer, or I want to select. So I want to select everything, so I don't just have um, so I'm selecting everything, selecting all the countries. I could just delete the slicer. I'm just selecting everything. So I have everything selected. And I'm just going to keep the slicer here until when I need to work with it. I'm going to keep this one here. So I got this, my pivot table, and then everything is also selected for the filter. So I have everything in full. And then I'm going to create a chart. So how am I going to create the chart? I'm just going to click on the pivot table and then go to pivot table analyze. And then I click on pivot charts, and there I have a column chart there. So this is the column charts. So now this is a chart that gives me a visual representation of my pivot table. So here I'm able to see the revenue for each region. I'm able to see it visually presented as a column chart. So this is the column chart here, and then these are different controls for the column chart. So if I want the axis to be off, I can click on that and the axes are off. If I want the chart title to be off, I can click on that just to create a bit more space. And then I can put my data labels, so you can see the data labels fixed at the outside end. I can put them in the center. I can put them inside base. Okay, so let me just keep the outside end, so that these are different formatting we can do on our pivot charts. I can remove the legends. I can remove the grid lines, all kinds of things you can do. So this is worth exploring. And then furthermore, I can click on this, I come over here and then remove some of the field buttons. Okay, so removing some of the field buttons. Also, I can remove the filters as well. Remove the legend buttons, axis field buttons, all those filters. Okay, so I can remove them. And this is my pivot charts. Furthermore, I can also work on the design. So let's say I want to have design. So let me go back with my axis titles. Sorry, not axis titles now, but the axis. Okay. So let's say I want a special design for Europe. So I can come over here and select it. So double clicking helps me select it, and I can choose a different color for that to represent that. So let's say I want to go with brown. So there you go. You can select that, so you can edit the bars, you can edit the numeric values there. So this is the pivot chart. Now let's see what happens with the filter. So let me start applying the filter. Okay, so Australia is not selected. Now when I select Australia, you can see the change there. Let's say I want to remove a few of them. So you see, as I remove different countries, you can see my pivot table is updating, my pivot chart is updating as well. So removing, playing around with it based on what I want to investigate. And then now I have just laptop selected, and this is what we have here. If I want laptop and printer, I would have to come change the setting here. And this is laptop and printer. You see, if I add the keyboard and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is just a good example of how pivot tables are so important and so useful when it comes to working with data. So next time you have a data set and you want to work with, explore converting the data set into the table format and also creating pivot tables and pivot charts. That would help you understand your data set much better. If you've got a large data set and you're overwhelmed with it, exploit using pivot tables. And one thing I'll say is one keyword that comes to mind when it comes to working with pivot tables is categorization. So essentially what you do with the pivot tables is take different columns and then exploit the categories. So any column in your data set that doesn't have categories and is kind of unique will not be summarized in the pivot table. When you've got categories, whether it's based on the years or the month or based on different text columns, then that's a good candidate for a pivot table. So before we wrap up, I'm just going to do something. So let me come over here and then I'm going to come and update this pivot table. Oh, sorry, update my data set. So I come over here and I do 2023 as the ID. Okay, so that's an ID. And then I'm just going to put a date there, say 21st of August 2026. So that's a new date. And for here, I'm just going to add, I'm still going to add Africa. And then I'm going to add, let's say, Ghana. And here I'm going to put laptop. And then laptop goes with electronics. And here I'm going to put can put a high value, let me say 50,000. Okay, so I'm sure this is out of view. So this is just what I added to the set. Okay, so previously I had 22 entries. Now I have 23. So I've got 23 entries now. So now this is 50,000. So it means that, now let me make it much higher. So we expect um, I'm making it 150,000. Now let's look at a pivot table. So my pivot table is on this sheet 5, and you see that it hasn't been updated. So how do we update our pivot table once we have made entries or updates or corrections in our data set? What we'll do is click on the pivot table, and then you've got pivot table analyze here, and then you refresh. So there are two options, is either refresh or refresh also. If I do refresh, all I'm just going to do is just refresh that. But if I do refresh all, then it's going to refresh across all the pivot tables and the charts as well. So let me do refresh all. Okay, could not get data. Okay, so because I've got some other pivot tables and charts in this sheet apart from this one, I'm just going to refresh. Okay, so just to refresh, let me see. Okay, so for some reason, oh, okay, so that this I have an issue with my slicers. Okay, so let me at this point just delete my slicer because not all is selected. So you see it's been okay, and there you go. So you see now it's refreshed, and now my new total is 226,800, and that corresponds with the updates I made on my data set. So just take note of that. And here you see the chart. So we've got this long bar here which represents Africa. So this is how we update our pivot tables and pivot charts after we have made updates in our data sets. So I'd like to say that these data sets will be available for download. All you need to do is just check the comments and the link will be there. You'll be able to download the data set from Google Drive, and I encourage you to practice on your own. Once again, I wish to remind you to subscribe to this channel and like this video and share it as well. Okay, so yes, all right, so we have, yes, the column chart. Okay, so we've got our column charts, and let's see how it looks like in, if it's a bar chart. So this is the column charts. This is the column chart. Now let me go back and reduce this. Okay, so I'm just going to make it let's say 20,000, so we can have the bars of similar size. And then I go to, another option is to go to data, and then you can see refresh. Okay, so that's refreshed. So this is, we can either go to data tab and refresh, or you go to the pivot table analyze and refresh as well. Okay, so now let's see what happens. The chart can be changed. So this is a column chart. So I can come over click on Pivot Chart Analyze and go to okay, or let me go to Design, and here we have Change Chart Type. Okay, so click on Change Chart Type, and I can change it from a column to a bar chart, and this is how it looks. Okay, so which do you prefer? Okay, so this is a bar chart. This is a bar chart, and then let me create another chart. Okay, this is a column chart. Okay, so this is how this data looks as a as a bar chart here and as a column chart here. So which do you prefer? Please let me know in the column in the comment section. Okay, so which you prefer, and then let's come over to our dates pivot table here, and then let me create a chart. So creating a chart here this time as a pie chart, and there you go. So this is a pie chart for this pivot table here. And of course, if I put my slicer and I keep changing, you would see the pie chart changing as well. Okay, so yeah, so the pivot charts stay linked to the pivot tables within, and we've seen how to remove unnecessary elements. Now, this is the best practice. Keep one message per chart. Okay. Clouded with a lot of data or information becomes difficult to understand. Let's have clear titles, consistent scales. Pivot charts are preferred over regular charts for analysis because they're linked to the pivot tables. Now, remember that the pivot tables do not auto update, and we have to refresh them. We saw that. We saw refresh, and we saw refresh all. We saw what happened when we added new rows, and we have seen the importance of pivot tables. All right, so pivot charts response to filters and slicers. Okay, so we've seen filters, we've done filtering, and we've observed how it works. And then these are some of the questions we can answer with the help of our pivot tables and pivot charts, like which region generates the most revenue, which product performs best globally, which month has the highest sales. You can't get that by just looking at the entire data set. But sure, you can get that by creating the right pivot tables. Now, common mistakes to avoid is creating pivot tables from poorly structured data. We talked about that. You have to clean your data before you have your pivot tables, or editing your pivot table results manually. No, you shouldn't come to your pivot table and start editing the results. No, because these results were obtained from the data set. Okay, so you have to make your edits in the data set. So the data set is like the back end, and the pivot table is like what you get to see. And also using regular charts instead of pivot charts, and forgetting to refresh your pivot table. So these are some of the common mistakes to avoid. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our module today. So we've been able to build pivot tables, summarize our large data sets dynamically, create and customize our pivot charts, and also prepare. And this is also useful for preparing analytical visuals for dashboards. Okay, so this is a key step usually in data analysis using Excel. So we could come over to where we have our pivot tables and pivot charts, and then assemble all the visual elements in another sheet and build our dashboard. So I encourage you to check this channel. We've got videos on building dashboards and doing data analysis. So I encourage you to subscribe and explore as well. So in our next module, we're going to be looking at lookup and reference functions. So that brings us essentially to the end of today's session. So this is an intro to Excel course, and we have 10 modules lined up. We have looked at several aspects of Excel. This should give you a good foundation for using Excel for things like data analysis or automation. We've looked at functions, we've looked at data entry, we've looked at data formatting, we've looked at references, we've looked at data organization, and today we have looked at exploration of our data using pivot tables and pivot charts. So I want you to stay connected. We still have one more module in this course. Okay, so we're going to be looking at lookup and reference functions in our next class, and that's going to come up very shortly. I want you to stay connected. So I want you to hit the subscribe button so you get notified and you become aware when we upload the next video. Also want you to hit the notification bell. I want you to like this video, and I want to hear from you in the comments. Okay, so apart from what we do on YouTube, at Coding Keywords, we also have other platforms where we can connect. So we got a WhatsApp group. So if you check the link, you're going to see our WhatsApp group. Click on it and join it. There are more resources for you there. We also have a Telegram channel, and that's a community where we get to meet and discuss different things tech. So I want you to stay connected. Then we have lots of resources that are going to come up very soon. So I want you to stay connected so that you can take advantage of our resources. So what do we do at Coding Keywords? Here, we try to introduce different aspects of tech in the best possible way, which is just using the keywords. So we point you to the keywords, and that guides you to learn different aspects of tech easily. So whether you're learning programming using Python or using Java, or you want to learn analysis or say machine learning, data analysis, we show you the keywords, okay? We present it in a way that you can easily learn. Or say you want to learn design using Canva, or you want to learn aspects of tech like um, the finance aspect and all of that. We take our time to present it using an easy to understand tool. So for example, this is Excel. So this is an Excel tutorial, and I'm not using PowerPoint or I'm not using PDF for the presentation. I am using Excel itself. Now, surprisingly, I'm using, I have a data set, okay, for my lessons, and I have pivot tables. And this is a slicer. So you see, this is a slicer. I actually use a slicer to teach. You see, I use a slicer to teach. This slicer is connecting to a pivot table. It's connecting to a pivot table, and it's connecting to a data set that has my course. So you see, this is specially prepared for you to learn it in the best possible way. So I don't have to be switching between PDF and PowerPoint to teach you, do my presentation right here. So that's just to tell you that we have carefully prepared materials for you to learn tech in an easy way. So I want you to stay connected to Coding Keywords. Once again, I am Dr. Adejo. Thank you for joining this live session, and see you in the next video. Bye.